Sometime. Wow, that is
Good morning,
ugly,
JP. Let's
good
do this.
morning. That is an ugly yellow Land Rover. Okay, we got green light. That means we can go ahead and hit this. Get ready for the loud.
Yeah. Get those words!
All right, guys, there's your Monday morning wake-up call. It's time for Bid Nerds. It's a whole new week of nerding out on your most interesting cars, on Cars and Bids, Bring a Trailer, P-Car Market, RAD For Sale, whatever automotive enthusiast auction site there is. We're going to nerd out about the interesting cars on there. How are you, Michael Deeb? Welcome back on a Monday.
Yeah, man. It's good to still be here in Vegas. I got to tell you, man, I miss being around here. It's been a fun week. I don't want to go home.
Right? I mean, look, it's usually we do this show. I'm in Vegas and Michael Deeb's in the Bay Area, but this week he's been, well, kind of like bridging the 2 weeks. He's been here for a little while. We're actually both of us in Vegas, not in the same room, but close enough. We had a great weekend. We went out to Death Valley. We took your air-cooled car and my air-cooled car, and we didn't die in Death Valley. How'd that work out?
Think about this, JP. Since our last broadcast, we've been on 2 drives and had a car show. That's not bad, man.
That's true, right?
In the Bay Area, when I was a kid, the weatherman used to call it a go-do-it weekend. We had a go-do-it weekend, and it was awesome. Ruby, I put more miles on Ruby in the last 3 days than I did all during the pandemic. How's that?
That's awesome.
That Death Valley run, I mean, we drove, it was like 5 hours of driving, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we must have done like a couple hundred miles at least, right?
We did, and if you've never been to Death Valley, it's just an amazing drive. You would imagine being out in the in the most harsh desert in the world would be kind of boring. The way you described it potentially was like vanishing point, just straight lines and everything. But there's surprisingly the road like hugs the mountain as it goes through the valley, so it's actually a terribly fun kind of sweeping epic road. So you're not sitting there just falling asleep. It's actually a good drive. And the weather could not have been better.
Yeah, and you know what? We actually had a pretty good crew. I mean, it wasn't Rami Mirza pace, but I'm okay that it wasn't. I'm okay that it wasn't. It was not PCA pace either, which are the two extremes, right? And I think our nerdy, listeners would know the difference. But it was a really good pace. We got up early enough that the roads were clear on the way up there. Yeah. And what's funny is my memory after we did it, my memory of the vanishing point was the drive out there and the drive back. Yeah. But once you're in Death Valley, almost all of that part of California is really fun, and it's really rugged terrain. It was a good drive, good fun.
But the road was super smooth. The only hiccup we had was after we left Dante's Peak, which is 5,000 feet elevation, looking down into the valley. That's like a couple hundred feet below sea level. When we left that, we got to kind of a pretty quick clip. Most of us were in air-cooled Porsches, but we had one guy in a McLaren, and so he's hauling butt, and we're trying to keep up. We're doing at least triple digits, and I'm in my convertible, and I didn't put the boot over the convertible. If you drive like an old air-cooled 911, you know that you don't just put the top down. You have to put this this tonneau cover over the top of the flap stop. Otherwise, apparently, parts come off of it when you hit triple digits. Because as I'm driving, you're a couple car lengths behind me, and I just see this thing go off in my rearview mirror. I'm like, oh no, it's going to hit your car. And somehow it didn't. I apologize for freaking you out.
It looked like somebody threw a boomerang at me. It was the header. It was the interior header where all the convertible top and the base of your convertible top come together at the front of your windshield.
At the windshield, yeah.
Yeah, and that piece just it loosened up at the 120 mile an hour winds and came loose and got airborne for a minute.
Yeah, it had some hang time, right? I mean, it was
it slowed down pretty fast. I did not have to swerve, but we had to go back and get it. And it's funny because it happens kind of in slow motion. And you're like, okay, stop and go back and get it. And by the time you stop, you realize you're a quarter mile, half mile down the road. Yeah. And you're like, all right, where the hell was it? And so we went back and found it.
Yeah, by the time I turned around, you had already found it, and so it popped right back on. We only lost one little plastic clip. It actually was pretty much
very
unscathed.
Fortunate.
Yeah.
Anyways, but a great day, man. It was a great drive.
Good thing there wasn't a fleet of Harleys behind us or something like that. A bunch of Harleys could keep up at that speed. But man.
We passed motorcycles all day. It was hilarious.
And not just Harleys. It was like sport bikes. There's nothing worse when you're in a sports car and you come around a corner and there's a guy on a sports bike that's not going fast enough. It's like, come on, man.
Remember when we were coming down from Artist Palette, I was right behind you and we were leading the group and you were hauling until we came up on like 6 people on sport bikes that were going unreasonably slow. It was really weird. I was like, are we really being held up by a bunch of guys on rice rockets? Like, come on, man.
And they didn't pull over. There were so many opportunities for them to get out of the way. Look, if you're on a really cool road and you see 5 Porsches behind you, just move the hell over.
Get out of the way. Yeah,
just move. It's fine. Everybody's going to be happy. I don't care that you're going slow. Just move.
You'll love the way it sounds when we drive away.
That's right. Oh, man. All right. Well, you guys tuned in to hear about our weekend. I'm sure you're like, whatever, just get to the damn cars. We're going to do a very quick recap on last week's predictions. Not the whole week. Let's just do Friday, and let's move through that fairly quickly. What we do on this show, just so you guys know if you're new to the show, is we don't just nerd out about the cars and talk about the features and why we like them or why we think they're interesting, but we also make predictions as to what we think they will hammer for at the end of their individual auctions. So we do make number predictions. Do not listen to us. We don't know what we're talking about. This is not advice. We are not saying buy this car at this price. We're just basically guessing what we think these cars will actually sell for, or oftentimes not sell for. Sometimes they fail to sell. They don't reach the reserves, that sort of thing. So we make those predictions and we check ourselves at the beginning of every show. Man. And last week you had a great week. I had a pretty rough time, man.
You had people in town. You had stuff going on.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Whatever. Yeah, you weren't even in town. Yeah, I had people in town.
Adam Carolla is about to drop your program. You're busy. You don't have time for the show anymore. You don't do homework anyways, but I don't even know. Are you awake when we do the show? I crushed you last week, which is hilarious because that rarely happens. Normally you win, and normally it's close. But last week your head was in another space. On Friday the 26th, JP, we had Lane Skelton on. Lane's a great guy out of Santa Cruz. The ambassador of DWA, Driving While Awesome, and their car shows down there in the Santa Cruz area. He's also one of the founding partners of Radwood. And RAD For Sale, which has just come on. And so we've had the pleasure of having Lane on twice. And I don't like him. He's pretty good at this. We had 5 cars, and if we were keeping, thank God we don't count his score, because he doesn't matter. But if he did, he beat us 3 times. So I don't like the guy. He's really smart. JP, our car of the day was what? Was it the 1M, the 300Z, the Mercedes?
Oh, it was the 1M, I believe. Yeah.
The 1M. All right, let's start with that one. So we looked at a 2011 BMW 1M in that burnt orange. It was like a one-owner car. It had less than 20,000 miles. Really, really cool car. I said 65,000, which would have put it about 10 grand over MSRP. You said 66 and took the over, and Lane said 68, and so it sold for 68,500. I mean, JP, you get to chalk up the victory, but Lane got that and nearly got a Yahtzee. You see what I'm saying?
I know, right? Yeah, what are we doing? Getting these guys that know what they're doing. This is just not right. Guys, I'm working on getting photos for these cars for you here. We're having a little bit of a sync problem, but keep going there, Deeb.
Yeah, so JP, we'll jump over to Hemmings. Hemmings had an interesting car. It was a 2000 Mercedes SL600. I know you and Rochelle have had one in your family at one point, and I love the cars. My first job in the car business was with Mercedes-Benz in Santa Fe, and so I was selling SLs of the previous generation when they were new, and that was that was a car that was our big ticket item. You sell an SL, and you made a pretty handsome voucher. This was a neat car because it was immediately taken to Rentec in Miami, where it was fitted with the Stage 1 motor kit, pumping out like 600 horsepower and 700 and almost 50 pound-foot of torque. Yet everything else on this car was stock. It wasn't even an AMG package, and it had the stock wheels. So this is a real Q car, and we wondered where it would go, especially on Hemmings, which is so domestic heavy. Would a very special German car bring the money? I said 22, you said 20, and Lane split the difference at 21. This car sold for $25,200, which I would say is pretty fair market value, and an interesting nod to see that Hemmings could get the real money for an unusual German car. So by all accounts, an SL is absolutely the pleated pants front that, the pleated pant crowd that Hemmings attracts. So maybe we're not terribly surprised by that result. Moving on, we looked at a 1995 Nissan 300ZX Turbo that was on Cars and Bids. This is a really cool car that had a few little JDM, how you should say, like the lower front air dam and the rear valance that would have come on a 300Z in Japan, pieces that you would have never gotten in the United States, and then a few other little mods, bolt-on stuff that we would all have done to our own cars. And it was really clean. It was white. It was manual. It was turbo. It had the T-tops. None of us really liked the black painted wheels, but a cool car all the same. I said 28, and you took a more conservative route. You said 26, and we've been feeling 300Zs lately. Lane took the over and said 29. So although I technically get the win, Lane was the closest. That Skelton guy again.
That darn Skelton, man. What are you doing?
Yeah. So he did really good. That's his second win if you're scoring this at home. I don't think you should, though. He doesn't count. He's not a host. And then Gary Ackerman, our old boss from Godden, who has an incredible collection of cars, had found the 1958 Fiat Abarth 750 GT Zegato on Bring a Trailer and sent me the listing. So I thought it'd be really fun for us to cover that car and thank Gary Ackerman for the nomination. By all accounts, a really neat car. Essentially, Abarth took a Fiat 600 platform, shrunk it, and then had Zegato coach build them a body. In other words, Zegato, this isn't even like a run-of-the-mill Abarth body. They took this car to Zegato and they hand beat a bunch of aluminum panels to create this and maybe a handful of others that look just like it. The motor was bored out from 750 to 850, and it makes like twice as much horsepower, but we're still talking 70 horsepower here, or 50 horsepower, something small. Putt car, but really cool provenance. This raced in period, and it's a really neat car that's bringing stupid money. You could have bought this car for 30 grand a few years ago. But we all drank the Kool-Aid. It was sitting at 135 when we looked at it, and I went really high and said 150. You took the conservative tack underneath me at 149, and then Lane drank the rest of the bowl and went 158. Unfortunately, this car did not get another bid. Fortunately, though, it had already met the reserve, so it sold for $135,000, which is still a ton of money for like a Fiat 600, but it's super inexpensive if you consider it as a handmade aluminum coach-built car from Italy in the 1950s. It's a bargain by that rationale. So this car is kind of a tweener car. Anyway, JP, you won that one, so congratulations to you on that. And then our final car, Lane had selected, and this was the 1959 Jaguar Mark I sedan with a manual transmission in white with the red leather interior. And this was just an interesting car. We all sort of believed in it. I said it would get up to 35,000. You took the over at 36, and then Lane came in after nominating this car. Lane came in as the lowest person at 34,000. So although I get to score the win, Lane got that one. So JP, I got 2, but Lane got 1 of mine. I got 3, but Lane got 2 of mine, and then you got 2, and Lane got 1 of yours. So he had 3. And he just embarrassed us and humiliated us. I think we should lose his phone number and never call him again. Thank you, Lane, for being on the show. Yeah. But anyway, there you go. That's a day. Very mixed results, but we're really interesting and eclectic group of cars. Fun Friday. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, that was last week's cars, particularly last Friday's cars. So now it's time to get to today's cars. The big car of the day is kind of interesting. I don't know if it's really super interesting, but it is because it is kind of common. But I really like this car, and I think they're still one of the best values, even though they're going up. This S2000. So let's talk about the 2006 S2000 over on Cars and Bids. Doug DeMuro brought a good one today, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's really neat. This is an AP2 JP. So they bored out the motor from the AP1 from 2 liter to 2.2 liter. And essentially what they got with that is a lot more torque that made these cars more drivable in US spec. They also spaced out the ratios in the transmission, basically second through fourth gear, have a more normal ratio, whereas an AP1, which is a very rev-happy, high-strung motor, because all that power is made really high up near redline at 8,000 RPM, 9,000 RPM on an AP1. It's a very close ratio gearbox, but this with the torque and the flatter torque curve, they could do a more conventional spacing of the gear ratios. And by all accounts, this is just a better car for driving on the street in the U.S. market. This is much broader appeal. But I think AP1s are really cool cars for what they are. They're really kind of a track car when you think about it, because all the power is made up high and then the gear ratios are really tight. But in any case, this is a beautiful AP2 in red. It's a 2006. It's got speakers in the headrest. This does have traction control, which the AP1s do not. And they just Honda reliability. The motors are hand assembled, and I've owned one of these cars. I leased one for 3 years and regretted the day I turned it in. I should have kept the car. Values on these went through the roof just a handful of months after I turned my car in. They had sold the last ones in the United States, and then the values on these just went up and up and up and up. And I wish I kept mine. I had that it's almost like Porsche's sapphire blue metallic. That was the color I had on mine, and I just loved the car. This is a nice one, JP. It's offered out of Wilmington, North Carolina, with 80,000 miles and looks to be in pretty good condition, although that lower front valance has been repainted before, and in current condition, it's pretty scraped up. But all the rest of the paint on the car is original, and all of the VIN tags are on every one of the panels. So this is a really, really stock, interesting car. There is one service of note that it piques my interest. At some point, he had to change the valve cover gaskets, and while they were in there, they put in aftermarket valve springs and seats. I don't know why they would do that and not use the Honda stuff. I can't imagine there's any merit to changing these things. I've never heard of it being done before. But when you look at the photo bucket, there are 2 or 3 photos of all the books and records laid out, and this car comes with incredible records. And I would say that that's going to make the next buyer feel pretty confident about getting into this car. That little shift knob comes off the NSX. If you see that, JP, that's a nice little touch that he put on the that little thing. But I mean, man, bang for the bucks. Look, you and I joke all the time that these things cost twice as much as a Miata, and I will go out not very far on a limb and scream at the top of my lungs. It's twice as much fun as a Miata. Yeah. Everything a Miata promises, the S2000 delivers. The shifter is incredible. The steering is incredible. The motor just goes and goes and goes. And the handling is absolutely 10 to 20% superior to a Miata. You can drive this car to its limit and feel like a hero in the process. It is confidence inspiring and just amazing to drive. And they have wonderful reliability. This guy changing his valve cover gaskets, I've never heard of that happening before. So if you are thinking of an S2000, this nerd cannot endorse one enough. You should absolutely get one, and the more stock it is, the better it will be. I would stay away from the modded ones and just get one that was like this. So there you go, JP. What do you think, man? You going to get one of these days? Am I going to talk you into buying one?
I don't think anybody has to talk anyone into getting an S2000. I mean, they're one of the best cars there is.
Cool.
You know, everybody talks about these cars from an enthusiast point of view. It's always, it's the greatest track car, it's the greatest power, it's the greatest bang for the buck, blah, 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 blah. All the accolades that we can dump on this car. When this car was new, I used to represent a Honda car dealership in Seattle, and so we made commercials for them all the time. Most of our commercials were for Civics. You know, it was always like because when you make a local car dealership commercial, it's always about the price. It's like, you get a lease a Civic for $199 or something like that, right? And so we were making the commercials for them. You know, we would make a commercial every month, a new commercial, and we had this spokeswoman. She was a local actress, a friend of our family, really good friend of my wife's as well. And one day we shot a commercial where she was driving one of these instead of a Civic or a minivan or an Odyssey or whatever. And she actually was a mom. I mean, she fit the part. She was the spokesperson because she had all of that, right? So we put her behind the wheel of one of these. She is the least car person you could possibly imagine. This is a woman that drove a 240 Volvo for a decade. Not ironically. I mean, that was just the car because it was a super simple basic car. So to put her behind the wheel of one of these, she was just like, oh my God, life is all about fun tokens. This is just insane. Her eyes were bulging out. She's like, I can't believe it. So I don't care who you are. This is one of the most fun cars that exists on the planet. And the power is in all that fun performance stuff, whatever. Who cares? This is just a fun car to own. This is why convertibles are the best sports cars.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so true. My uncle bought one at the same time I got one. We went to the same dealership and bought essentially the same car. I turned mine in and he kept his. And my uncle, he commutes like in the valley, between like Sacramento and Modesto and things like that. So I'm sure his is a miler. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 125,000 miles on his car. But I would venture to say that his car has been pampered and babied and in excellent condition. And I hope that one day when he gets tired of it, I get the chance to buy it from him, and I would hang on to my uncle's old S2000 and have a blast with it. This car looks pretty clean. I love that it's mostly stock. I wonder if Cars and Bids is the best place for this car, even though it's in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I wonder if that weird service where they had to open an S2000 motor, even if just taking the valve covers off, just seems weird to me, and that they wouldn't put Honda parts in there. kind of bugs me. So the question begs, would an 80,000 mile clean S2000 break $30,000? And they've been trending in the right direction. I would say that that's a very real possibility, but I don't think this one is, JP. And so for that reason, those reasons I mentioned previously, I think it's going to stall out and sell, but be held back at $27,000. And I'll send it to you. What do you think?
Man, that's tough. That was the number I was going to take. So do I go over or under? I mean, I'm going to bid because it's cars and bids. It's actually, when I saw this car this morning, looking at it, I was going, yeah, this is probably a low 20s because it's nice, but it's not that nice. I'm going to go, and it's already there, but it's cars and bids. So, we don't see late stage rallies on cars and bids very often. This is the car that you should, if ever there was. So this makes me go under. I'm going to go 26.5.
Good job.
I'm going to say it's going to be right in there.
Right,
I could definitely see these breaking 30, but it's going to have to be a really low miles, perfect one.
Yeah, JP, our car's at $22,000. It's on 14 bids, and it still has over 3 hours to go. So I think you're in good position for this one, and a nice car. Look, at 26, it's a good value. If it didn't have the valve cover thing and it was on B18 and went for 30, I think it's still a good value because it's clean and it's stock. So congratulations in advance to the new owner of this car. I think if you haven't had one before, you're in for a treat. I couldn't say enough nice things about it. All right, JP, you want to look at a yellow box of tissue?
Oh boy, let me just
let's go to Bring It Trailer and tee up for our audience the 1997 Land Rover Range Rover 4.6 HSE. This yellow one is called the Vitesse edition, and your new friend and my old friend Rafi from the pit stop in Brisbane, California, he bought one of these, and JP, I'm telling you, he drove that car for like almost 10 years. Now, again, he's a mechanic, so he can afford to buy that car. And every time something goes wrong, he can order the parts and he can fix it himself. This is not a good car for you and me, but man, every time he pulled up in that car, I was like, oh, I loved it. The wheels, those like, 5-star wheels look like something that came off of a Ferrari. The bright yellow paint job on a really stodgy English SUV is this just like the great little pop for a car that most people would assume is out, smells like wool and wet dog. It's just a neat car that Range Rover made, and he rocked it. And Rafi would always call it the Vitesse with like a French accent or something silly. This is a no reserve auction, JP, offered out of Red Rock, Texas, with 111,000 miles. The Vitesse is built on the Land Rover Range Rover HSE, which employs the 4.6 liter Rover V8. Dual range transfer case is sort of the norm. 4-speed automatic transmission. These are all-wheel drive, 18-inch Mondial wheels, which I think really make this thing look very handsome. Super cool car. I even like that they have like the little brush guards on the taillights and the headlights and stuff like that. I think that stuff all came from Range Rover, I think. And if it didn't, it's probably Range Rover parts that you could order in their accessories catalog. Really great looking car. Not the most reliable. I don't think the bid nerds would encourage you to go out and buy one of these for yourself. It's the car my heart longs for, but my brain goes, no freaking way. So there you go, JP. What would you say to our audience who might be considering spending any hard-earned dollars on this hunk of steel?
Yeah, if you're going to if you bid on this car and win the auction, and you think that you're going to go to Texas, fly there, and then drive this thing home back to, I don't know, California or the East Coast or something like that, make sure you have AAA or Haggerty or something like that, some kind of road club, because you're probably going to have to use it. Have an alternative plan to get home. These are not reliable at all. They sure are wonderful when they work. I love the yellow piping and everything like that. This yellow color is definitely not a color I would choose for many cars, but hey, when you're driving a number 2 pencil, why not? This car, this thing is about as useful as one of those. I mean, it's just, as a car, it's just, good Lord, they're just junk. When they were new, do you remember when they were new, how expensive they were? I mean, it was just,
it was crazy.
$100,000 for one of these. Yeah, it's like, what are you doing?
On the Defender's shiny new uncle, it's crazy. One of 250 Vitesse examples, JP. And yeah, I agree with you. If somebody flew to Texas, they could drive this car for 2 days straight, not make it out of Texas, and not make it home. This car could break down before you even leave the state.
Yeah, and how much is it going to cost to get someone to ship the thing to where you need to go in the last minute like that? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so it's only sitting at $7,000. This is something you could go on Craigslist and find one just like it for $3,000 or $4,000 all day long. Now, some of them are good, some of them are bad. This is obviously a pretty decent one. But I mean, you see so many of these with big, donk wheels, and people have just, they're ridiculous. Okay, so what's it going to land at? What's
so
your
JP,
bid?
with 4.5 hours to go, it's a no reserve auction sitting at $7,000 on, really not a lot of action, just 6 bids. It's amazing to me that a car this rare with this much eyeball would still suffer from the reputation of all the other ones that were made that are just like it. So it's crazy. You would think that might be a bright spot and bring twice as much money. I would think that that's what it's worth, that this would bring $14,000 to $18,000. But it doesn't seem to be today. So I'm going to go 10 grand, and it sells because it's a no reserve auction. So where do you think it's going to go home at?
Yeah, it is bring a trailer and someone, it is kind of neat and kitschy, and it would be cool to have in a collection of other kind of neat and kitschy stuff. As long as you're driving it around town or you live on an island or someplace, this would be a fantastic, beach car. Like if you own an island in the San Juans up in Washington or something like that. It'll rust away, but who cares? Yeah. I'm going to say 10.5. I think it maybe creeps.
So you're going to take over. Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. That's probably a dumb thing, but it's a lot. There's a lot of time left on this thing.
I would love, living in Vegas, I would love to rock one of these with an LS motor. But that isn't the solution, because all the other electrical, like the air suspension will fail and the windows won't lift, and you put on the wipers and the radio stops working. These cars are just assembled by blind elves. It's really bad. So
the Lucas Electronics are notorious.
Yeah, I would love to LS this thing, but it ain't going to happen.
Yep.
All right, JP, here's another unreliable car. Justin Jurgens is going to turn us off right now down there at British Sports Car Service. He's going to be like, Deeb, what are you doing to my business model, bro? This is a 1994 Jaguar XJS convertible. And yes, JP, that bad boy has the 6-liter V12 with just 37,000 miles, offered out of Santa Ana, California. This is another English no reserve auction. How radwood is this car? Do you remember these things?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about having no value and no merit. Look at the shape of this thing. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know how to describe it. This car was, kind of otherworldly when it first came out, and it did not age well. Even before they stopped producing it, it was terribly out of style. And these cars, you think the Range Rover is problematic. This car could actually be worse. Although when it's running and when it's driving, they're very luxurious. They're really comfortable. Cousin George had one, a coupe. And I remember my dad borrowing it from time to time. And I got to drive that car several times when I was in my 20s. And I thought it was really cool to drive a Jaguar with a 12-cylinder. But this convertible is really pretty. I love the black with the tan. I love the gold in the wheels. And I remember these cars fondly because I got to drive my cousin's car. But I'd buy the Range Rover long before I'd buy one of these things. This scares me to death. And I've never seen anybody pay collector money for one. And this one looks to be in, fair shape. It's not amazing condition, but it doesn't look beat up either. JP, how radwood, aside from driving it to Radwood, is there anything left in this car worth owning? What do you think?
If you're going to Romeo and Michelle's class reunion or whatever, I had a friend out of high school. My buddy, he found one of these. It was like a '78 coupe with a 12-cylinder, and he was so excited. He was a guy that drove it. He had the nicest Buick Wildcat convertible you can imagine, and
from the 60s or 60s?
Yeah, it was a 60s. I think it was like a 68 or something like that. I remember my little Fiat. The size of my Fiat from the back tire to the end of the car was the same length as, so my car would probably fit in his trunk. But his poor Wildcat that he restored all through high school wound up getting T-boned by some some teenager. So he went out and he found one of these and was like, "Oh, this is so classy and so great." And he, you know, he bought it for like $3,000 or $4,000, and it was just like the poor guy. It almost ruined him. I mean, I remember helping him trying to replace some pump. I think it was a fuel pump or something like that. And then we realized that there were two, and he was like, "Oh my god, I got to replace both of them on one for each side because it's basically two 6-cylinder engines."
Two inline sixes,
just put together. Now, and to that end, the later model ones, because you're right, you mentioned how long they made these. They made these into the 90s and into what? Like, didn't they make these into 2000s?
I don't think they lasted that long, but in the 90s they probably phased out. You keep talking, I'll look it up.
Yeah, I mean, they made them for a long time, and at some point they put the 6-cylinder in there, and they were actually pretty reliable. And there are a few of these floating around with manuals in both the 12 and the 6-cylinder. Like a 6-cylinder, the 6-cylinder with a manual would actually be terribly fun. And for all you Cabrio phobes out there, this car, if there's ever a car that looks better as a Cabrio, it's this one. And if you're going to get a cab, this is definitely one of the cars. If you don't care about performance, you know, I mean, this thing's fast in a straight line. Even a coupe is going to be creaky and make all kinds of noise and twist and stuff like that. So who cares? You may as well not have a top while you're doing it. This is just a wonderful thing to just chew up miles on a straight highway or old Route 66, as long as you have a mechanic very near you.
You got to be near and dear to your mechanic. Jaguar made this car from 1975 to 1996, and not a lot of them. They only made 115,000 of them over the course of like 21 years. In '94, when this car was available, you could have asked for the 6-cylinder or the 12-cylinder, but a manual transmission version of this car is very rare in this country, and it doesn't necessarily bring a premium, although it might bring a small premium, but it's not going to make the car worth twice as much, because most smart people stay far away from this model.
I mean, I've actually seen manual ones before we started doing the show. Every now and then I'd see manual ones, and they were definitely bringing decent money on here compared to the crappy automatic ones. But you know, you just don't see them. How much? Where's this going to land? It's at $16,000 already. That surprises me. That's strong money for one of these. You're crazy.
$16,000 and like 18 bids.
It is low miles.
Yeah, and so listen, this one's a looker and it's low miles and it's the big motor. I'm gonna go $22,000, JP, and just send it to you and see where you come in. I don't know. I mean, I'm really guessing here. How do you know the value of a Jaguar? What's it possibly worth? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's Monday, and I think people are like, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's buy a car." They've been waiting all weekend. Right. Yeah, I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go 22. It's got 37,000 miles. I mean, if you buy this, you're dumb. If you buy this for $10,000, you're an idiot. But you know, I'm gonna bet the platform. We got a decent amount of time here, and I mean, somebody wants some heartache. You're gonna look so cool while this thing works. And then it's not. What was yours? 22. So I'll go 23.
Okay, cool.
I think this thing has 37,000 miles. Most of these have like 70 or 80,000 miles. I mean, this is just getting into that sweet spot where everything's going to start breaking. So why wouldn't somebody want to spend a bunch of money for it? Oh, we lost Michael Deeb there for a second. Hang tight, guys. Oh, we lost him, but he's back.
Yeah,
he's back. That's right.
My sister's calling me, and she knows. When I put on Do Not Disturb, if you dial me once, you get a busy signal. If you dial me 2 times in a row, it'll break through the Do Not Disturb and send me the call. So for her to call me twice, it's, you know, I think she wants to wish me happy birthday or something. But anyways, so there you go.
It is your birthday. To everybody out there, wish Michael Deeb a birthday. I was going to say something at the end of the show, but there you go.
Thank you. There you go. Yeah, so I think my sister's trying to reach me. Hopefully, if it's a real emergency, she'll call my wife. Yeah. All right, JP, let's move on down now to a car I think you and I are both excited about. We would not hesitate to buy this car. 2005 Ferrari F430. We should note that this car was originally equipped with an F1 gearbox, but somebody spent the money to do a 6-speed manual conversion. Now, let's put this into perspective. The F430 platform, the coupe and the Spider, were the last Ferrari offered with a manual transmission, last mid-engine V8 offered with a manual transmission. But in this day, F1s were selected, I think, more than 85% of the time. So of the total production over 4, 5, 6 years, however long they made the F430, only 15% of them came with a stick. in today's market, you can get a really nice F430, either a coupe or a spider, in and around, say, $85,000 to $120,000 with an F1 gearbox, the single clutch sequential manual gearbox. But
yep, we lost your audio, Deeb. Hold on, guys. He was saying, and he's coming back. We'll see if Michael. Man, this car looks so good. Okay.
Sorry, JP.
That's all right.
Yeah, everybody's wishing me happy birthday now. Sorry about that. The 6-speed manuals are bringing ridiculous collector money now. Coupes and spiders with fair mileage and in good condition that are stock are now easily touching and sometimes exceeding $200,000. So what do you think it costs to swap out the transmission in a Ferrari? Let's just say it's a ridiculous number like $25,000, which would just be absurd, right? You would never do that on any other car. That pencils on one of these. If you have a nice F1 coupe or spider and your car's worth $100,000 or $125,000 and you drop $25,000 or $30,000 to go do a manual swap, you still are now driving at the cost of $150,000 what is essentially a $200,000 car. Now, we don't think your car will bring $200,000, and this car is about to prove that. But certainly it's a cheaper way to get to enjoying that 500 horsepower mid-mounted V8 that has a chain-driven cam, which means you don't have to do that vaunted belt service that has plagued the values of earlier mid-engine Ferraris. This still winds up being a tremendous value, even if you're not going to recover all the money you invested in it. For as long as you planned on this car, you're ahead of the game. And so I think this is maybe not the craziest idea. I would never endorse radically modifying your Ferrari. I like them the way they come from Maranello, but this almost makes sense to me, JP. I have to say, even though it goes against my sensibilities, I'm okay with this. So I send it to you. Is this guy nuts? Am I crazy in endorsing this, or do you think that's a means to an end? And you get to like the 6-speed. If it's the Ferrari Getrag 6-speed manual, it's a great gearbox. It's a light clutch and a really easy shifter with the gated manual. It's fun, man. I think it's brilliant.
I just wonder. I don't think it'd be $25,000. I think it'd be a lot more, like a lot more. Like, where do you even source that transmission? I mean, if it were a $25,000 play, then yeah, that definitely pencils. But I would venture to guess that's like twice as much. Yeah, $50,000. I mean, I don't know. That's not something I don't either. Maybe it's something. Did the guy do it himself? The front end of this car, is that the normal front end of these? Yeah. Okay. Man, what a good looking car. This thing is so gorgeous. Right. I definitely want this car hard.
And the Scuderia front end is just slightly more aggressive with the two big scoops, and then like a molded in lower front, like the lower leading edge sticks out a little bit further. So the Scuderia is even more aggressive and more beautiful in my opinion. But the natural front end of this car is attractive. I agree with you. It really is hot.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, we always talk about how much unoriginal Ferraris freak out Ferrari buyers, but then when we see these auctions and we see the prices of what the cars go for, everyone says, oh, it hasn't had the service, or it wasn't done by an exact guy, or this, that, or the other. Oh, Ferrari people are going to... Well, it seems like that pleated pants Ferrari guy is just... They're a relic. They're a myth. They're gone. They're not relevant anymore. People are buying these Ferraris for big, huge money, despite the fact that they're not exactly the way they came from the factory. And I think that's done. I'm over talking about that shit because it's just over and over. We just see we blah 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 perpetuating that myth, and then we look at the numbers and we're like, what the hell? That thing sold for more than they've ever sold for before. So
I've got a receipt that's included in the bucket of files.
Sweet.
European Auto Group out of San Antonio, Texas, in November of 2019, charged our consignor $29,481 for the manual conversion. The complete gearbox and labor was $21,750. $5,000 to reprogram all the files because it's not the F1, it's now the manual, and then all the rest of the money was just miscellaneous stuff. But essentially, you can do this for around $30,000.
How long ago was that?
In November of 2019. That's not that long ago.
Yeah, but boy, a lot has changed since then. I mean, you got to wonder how much would it be to source a manual for one of these now. Like,
I don't know. Yeah,
and on that bill, it sounds like it was $7,000 and the rest of it was labor or something like that. I got to think
it was
20, the other way around.
21. Yeah, it was 21 for the gearbox and the labor, and then all the rest of the money was for the miscellaneous stuff to make it all work.
Wow, that still seems cheap to me. I mean, only
right?
only $8,000 to pull all that stuff out. Like, you couldn't do that in a 911, a Tiptronic 993. Forget it.
$29,000, $30,000. It was $30,000.
Yeah. Wow. That's so. I mean, yeah. I venture to guess that used manual transmissions laying around wherever there might be one are probably worth twice as much as they were back in 2019. That would be my bid, but whatever. This is such a cool car. If you can get this at a value, if this were a real manual, how much would it be worth?
So with 36,000 miles, I'd say this is north of 175, but maybe because of the miles, it would come in under 200. The ones we've looked at were all well under 20,000 miles, and by all accounts, like essentially brand new. Probably still smelled brand new on the inside, as most Ferraris do. This one, I'm guessing, has been driven and enjoyed, and as such, that would soften it up. But it's not an original 6-speed, and our car, JP, has less than 2 hours to go out of Milford, Pennsylvania, and is sitting at just $91,000 on I'd say a pretty low number of bids. I'm going to read it to you. It's 9 bids. I mean, somebody, if the reserve is low or reasonable, somebody's going to rip this car, and I'd say that's a crazy value.
Is there anything mentioned in the title? Has this thing had any accidents or any of that kind of stuff?
Let's take a look. I don't think so. I think it's got a clear Carfax, if I remember correctly.
There you go. Where's it going to land? And it's a slick top too. So I mean,
three. Yeah, it's a coupe. It's 3 previous owners, no accidents on the Carfax, and it's got there's a nice picture. It's got the battery charger, the books, the spare tire stuff. I mean, it's all there. And when they changed it, they also did a Capriso exhaust. So JP. When you get this thing up like to 8,500 RPM, it sounds like a freaking race car. I mean, the Capristo is a really good exhaust on the Ferrari. That's the one a lot of guys
What's your
want,
bid?
JP, this is going to be a great value for somebody. I think this car is going to get up to about $110,000. I don't know if it'll sell for that, but if it does, that's a great value. But I'd say 110 is not out of the question for that car. Where are you at?
I'm going to go 120. I'm going to give a decent spread there. How do you get this car for under 150,000? How do you get it? Yeah. It's not possible. Not anymore. I mean, 360s manuals are going for that. Why wouldn't this? This thing is just, man, I love it. Okay, so there you go. Get yourself a great value on a manual F430. And with all the new ones all coming with F1s or whatever the hell they call it now, this is the last of a breed. There's just so rarely do you get an opportunity to get one of these, much less the opportunity to get one that's not ridiculously priced.
Yeah, 430s with the manuals and 458s with the normally aspirated motors. I think they're both going to be collectible cars. Think of how well 993s and ultimately 964s have held their value as the last and greatest of the air-cooled generation of Porsches. This is going to be Ferrari's version of that, and certainly collectors are waking up to that. This car is going to come in as a value price no matter where it lands. Anything under 150 is a steal, essentially. But JP, if you don't have that kind of money, might we suggest going over to Pecan Market and picking up yourself a 1992 Porsche 968 Cabriolet, offered out of, and I just want to say this on the air, Swampscott, Massachusetts, with just 35,000 miles. Our cobalt blue metallic car has the 16-inch Cup 1 wheels, which are kind of but it does have a 6-speed manual, which makes this car really neat. It also has a limited slip differential. I like the blue exterior. I'm not a big fan of the gray interior. I have been feeling the 968. I know it's not your favorite transaxle car, but I like them. I'd prefer a coupe over the Cabriolet. But still, man, if you gave me this car, I would keep it. That's for sure. I would figure it out and make this thing work. I still love them. It is, I mean, it sounds silly, but it's like the 964 of transaxle cars. I love the front end, and it's just really pretty. I think you'd be really fun to put coilovers on one of these. And just humiliate guys in 911s with my little normally aspirated 4-cylinder cab. I would love to rock one of these. So, JP, I know you're a little bearish on these, where I'm more bullish, but I still love this thing. I love the color. It's just a cool car, and like, man, it's just sitting there at like $16,000 with like 2.5 hours to go. It's at 16.5 in Swampscott, Massachusetts. You ever been to Swampscott?
Oh yeah, I summer in Swampscott every spring. Yeah, I just said that. No, this I don't know where you got that I'm bearish on these. I like 968. I like all transaxle cars, and I'm a big. These cars don't do well in photos. They just don't photograph well. There's something about this look that just doesn't translate. But when you see them in real life, you're like, wow, that's a really pretty car. Yes, man. Those wheels are terrible. An update to the just standard twist, wheels, in an inch bigger looks so good on this body style. Throw some springs or, like you said, coilovers, even better. This car is going to give that S2000 a run for the money. But there it is. That's a car that's about the same money. The S2000 is definitely a better car in so many ways, but this still says Porsche on it. It's got the crest, and there's something about that this car definitely feels more substantial when you're behind the wheel. It feels like there's more car here, because there is. It's heavier, it's bigger in just about every measurable way, but the performance, they're pretty darn close. This has got a 3-liter, so it's got a little bit more power, but and the Vario, what year is this one again?
A 92.
Okay, so that's right on the cusp. The 93s had the 993 seats, and so these didn't.
JP, what do they call those mirrors? These were the updated mirrors on 964.
Those are arrows, yeah.
Yeah, they look really good. I love the front end of this car, even though you can see the headlights, they still pop forward just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
There
you go,
everything about this. Yeah, Bug Eyes. I would go 17-inch cup wheels on this. I think Recaro's, what do you call your Recaro's? Sportsters?
The Sportsters, yeah.
I would think Sportsters, black Sportsters, and then all you have is gray torque cards and gray carpets. Because you still have a black dash and black steering wheel. Oh, no, it's a gray steering wheel.
No, it's a gray steering wheel and dash, yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to work. All right, never mind. All right.
You could swap out the steering wheel pretty easily, but the dash, not so much, yeah.
Not so much, yeah. So, I don't know. I guess you're kind of stuck with a lot of gray in there.
Yeah, anyway, I do. I like that it's got the storage compartment in the back instead of the seats. That's kind of a cool little thing. Yeah,
I think that's very cool. Yeah, it's very.
How many miles on this car?
35,000, man. It just somebody just broke it in for us. Look at that thing.
That is really low miles. All right, where's it going to land?
I wish it were a different color. Look, P car market, man. How do you gamble on P car market? How do you venture? Where do you think it's going to land? This is a great car. It should do well. It's got eyeball. There's not a lot of them in the market. You can find one, but they're not, this is low miles for one of these things. I want to believe P-Car Market can bring all the money for this. I wrote $26,000, but I just think that's ludicrous for their platform right now. I'm not feeling it. So I'm going to go 22. And even that's a high number. I think it fails to sell at that because they allow their consigners to set ridiculous reserves. So I find no matter how off my bid is, and I know it's off, this car is going to wind up in the deal tank in about 5 hours from now, and then you can make whatever offer you feel like. So
where is it at now?
It's at 16.5 on 15 bids with one more thing to say to you, 2.5 hours to go at Swampscott.
I think it helps that it's, over there on the East Coast for P-Car Market. It seems like if you can drive down to Long Island and look in their little, they have an actual dealership. So that's why it feels like a dealership with them. If you go there, I think you can actually see these cars a lot of times.
Yeah.
I don't know if they actually have this car there in their shop. I have no idea. They have a beautiful shop, it sure looks like.
Beautiful brick
this
building,
car really would be a fantastic car. And I think absolutely collectible. The 968s are definitely on their way up. It hurts it that it's a cab, even though I love cabs. Yeah, I'm going to bet the over. You said 22. I'll go 23. I think it finds a little bit more money, but that's probably stupid of me. I
still think it's going to wind up in the deal tank. No matter what.
You're probably right because the owner of this car probably has it set. What do you guess the reserve is? Probably 30 grand if it's on deal tank?
28 or more. And I don't think he's going to get that on P-Car. Now, look, he might. But the gray interior and 16-inch wheels, I think, are detractors for what would otherwise a manual 35,000-mile cobalt blue should bring 30 grand with these low miles in that nice a condition. But the gray interior and the 16s and P-Car Market are the three factors that are going against this consignor.
And the basic bitch photos aren't helping. This car is a beautiful color and could be represented very well, but it's not. It's not terrible. We've definitely seen worse photo groups for cars. This car, at least,
it's very New England.
Even.
It's very New England.
You gotta love the back. Gotta love the background in this place. All right, so. So yeah, it's definitely
wicked
gonna
cool Porsche. Wicked cool.
How do you like them apples? This car, if it were on BAT, it would definitely be breaking 30 because 37,000 miles. That's just fantastic. All right, so if you're watching this, then we're bidding, 22, 25, whatever. If you're thinking you're going to be able to buy it for that, good luck. Not happening. We're just saying that's what it'll bid to because of the platform.
Yeah, and we'll eat crow. We'll happily eat crow. I'll be thrilled if P-Car could start doing something again. But they let my boy down. So, anyways, here's what it is.
They seem to have a run, and now it's like wah, wah, again. Okay, so what is that? The last car that was it?
That's
right?
it. Man.
That's all the cars of a Monday. It's his birthday. He wants to get to the cake.
Why are you still there? Go home. The movie's over. Go home.
Right. We got to do that on a RAD when we have Bradley or Lane on sometimes. Put that at the end.
With a bathrobe. He has to be in a bathrobe when he does it.
That's right, with the mug. Guys, if you haven't subscribed or hit the like and the notifications button, it's really important to hit the notifications button. We're noticing that even if you subscribe, YouTube isn't putting it out there that there's a new video out there for people. So make sure you hit the notification buttons as well as the subscribe button. We really appreciate you guys watching. Let us know what cars you want us to review and talk about in the future. If you think the most interesting car of the day is a specific car that we're not talking about, well, let us know and we'll talk about it. That's what we're here for. Happily.
Yeah. Do our job for us. Pick the cars.
Man. Come on. We got to go through all these. There's so many cars. How do you choose what the most interesting one is? Well, that's what we do because we're nerds, and we do this every Monday through Friday at about the 9 o'clock hour. Michael Deeb, happy birthday.
Thank you, buddy.
We're gonna be hanging out a little later, have some dinner, but we no matter how late we stay out tonight and how much we drink, we'll be back here in the morning for a Tuesday edition of Bid Nerds at around 9 o'clock like we do every day.
Tonight it's going to be red wine and red meat for sure.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. Yeah, that's definitely in our future. I guess I'm Ubering. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. We will see you tomorrow. Deeb, anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
To all the people that tried to interrupt the show to wish me happy birthday, I love you. Thank you.
He doesn't. He's done.